Hello, everybody, and welcome to the deck retrospective. Eric and I finished another campaign. Eric has another campaign in the books, the custom campaign Dark Matter. We're going to try to keep spoilers to a minimum as we go through this, because we're just going to talk about the decks and how they functioned. Eric played Joe Diamond. I played Bob Jenkins, and I think both of these decks were quite successful. I think they both got their jobs done. Dark Matter is an easier campaign in general and also XP rich, so we got a lot of nice stuff in our decks because of that. But I think overall these decks would have done well in a traditional campaign as well, assuming we had the same amount of experience. But Eric, before we get into Joe Diamond's deck, what did you think of Joe Diamond as a whole?
I liked Joe Diamond as a character and as a thing to build around, far more because of his stat line than necessarily his insight deck. Like, I did like the insight deck. It's very fun. It's very powerful.
His hunch deck, yeah.
But having a 4/4 and a 2/2 just actually felt really good. Like, it really showed me how much basic stats are a huge part of playstyle and character.
Do you think at all that this might change your perspective of how scared you need to be with the stat line? So, like, because you had such active stats? I mean, I'll ever keep in mind, once again, that Dark Matter is on the easier side for the threats against you, but do you think there's any sort of feeling that came from that?
I started just dying to the mythos just all the time. I didn't really fight it. I didn't really have any tech against it. I was just like, when the mythos happens, bad things happen to me, and I just have to adjust.
And you can just kind of like, does it take like any sort of mental load off of having to think about it? And it's just like, it's going to happen and it's going to hurt, but then I'll get through it and win the game?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And it also caused me, as you'll see in the deck, to ironically build a very weird deck. A very weird flex deck. I think that this deck actually breaks several of the cardinal rules we tell people about. But it was incredibly consistent. It performed incredibly well. That is, of course, also the easiness of the game. I would not run this in, say, Path to Carcosa. I would never even try. But basically, I got to start looking at how the Mythos deck tried to murder me, and be like, I'll just have more of those things, so when it hurts me, I'm fine.
Yeah.
That's just what I need. That's just all I need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, well, why don't you start?
Put my cards down.
You have your play area. The camera's on there, so just where you had your Joe Diamond for this. So there's Joe Diamond, but then you have this whole area over here to start putting cards.
So one thing I got some feedback on from Justin, I think midway through the campaign, and I briefly considered changing it, and I was like, nah, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be me. Was that my insight deck was weird. So I'm showing off my insight deck first, and I think I understand why the insight deck was weird, but I really enjoyed putting these things in as optionals and not planning on triggering the insight deck every round. That was actually something I really enjoyed doing. So my first one was Evidence. Fast, play after you defeat an enemy at your location. Discover 1 clue or 2 clues instead if you defeated enemies with a combined total of at least 4 printed health this turn. So I see why this is a weird thing to put in an insight deck.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed having it for free when I wanted it. And if I didn't have it, I was very okay without needing it. Like, we flexed so well that I ended up putting Evidence directly in there at the 1 experience cost, because it just felt like when it came up and it happened, it was good. And when it came up and it didn't happen, I didn't feel like I was losing. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I put Deep Knowledge in the Insight deck. I feel this one makes sense.
Yes, I don't think that one's strange.
Okay, good.
Well, it's as we get deeper in this, you're going to notice, and Eric's probably going to say it too, the things that I'm going to view as strange are the things that are reactive as opposed to active. And this is a very that's a very active card, while Evidence is very reactive because it has to trigger off something else.
Yeah. I really enjoyed putting Working a Hunch in there.
Yeah, that's just a staple for Joe Diamond, and he's about to get an upgraded version too, which is insane.
That would be brilliant, because that would be a lot of fun.
It's the same cost, but just 2 experience, and you can discover clue from anywhere.
I really enjoyed putting Burning the Midnight Oil in here.
That's also a very nice, simple one.
Good.
Yeah. That's not a strange one.
Okay, and then I also put Scene of the Crime in.
Yeah, so that one I think was an interesting choice. I usually don't, because again, I want to be able to control when I do it. But because we were both flexing, you didn't feel as bad about only using it for one clue, right? When I would be playing and I'm the clue getter, I would want to be able to trigger it for 2, even if if my teammate wasn't flexing as much. But I think in our situation, it worked pretty fine because regardless, it's just your first action for at least 1 clue.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got 2.
Yeah. And I really liked it too because with Joe Diamond, the way I looked at this was like, this is a card that I'm not having to draw.
Yep.
So, like, to me, I realized Joe Diamond has a special, like, you have to think of it differently, but I chose not to when I built this. Because I was like, I'm going to view this as an extra card draw if I want, when I want to play it. I'm not going to view it as a loss if Joe Diamond doesn't play this card. To me, that's not a lost free action economy or interaction. And so getting to play Scene of the Crime for 0, as if it was just a slightly worse working a hunch, for me was like, this is great. I've got 4 working hunches in here now. Yeah. I realize it's not actually fast. It's not actually the exact same card.
But the theory of it is sound, like at least in like practice. And I think as we saw here, at least for dark matter, it was good enough. And I think also for like some of the less intense campaigns, it's probably good enough. Because also, like, I don't think Scene of the Crime is strange in the hunch deck.
No.
Because like the cost reduction on it is really nice, right? Like you look at like evidence, for example, you're only reducing it by 1.
Yes.
So like that is a little bit less of a bonus for it, even if you're just looking to passively get it. But like Scene of the Crime, the 2 reduction is like half of his ability. So it's like, if you're still using half of it, it's still really good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was one other card that occasionally flopped in and out of it, which I liked, but I, again, really enjoyed having my economy in my insight deck. I was rarely hurting for money, especially with the way that you ended up taking a character that could help me buy things occasionally.
Yeah.
So throwing some of these things into my insight deck felt like I was getting to do free economy draws sometimes without having to actually pay anything to do it. And I was like, this feels fun. Was it smart? Probably not. Would I crack the case in a harder campaign? Probably not. But it triggered like once and I was so happy with it.
Yeah.
So because I was flexing with Joe Diamond, I ended up putting a bunch of my experience into characters like Michael Lee, who just improve what I'm flexing at better. I didn't actually get to use his extra damage terribly often.
I think it's just because when I was set up, I was too good at getting clues.
Exactly.
Right.
But that said, I'm happy to pay for that big of a body.
And the stat boost. Yeah, because it's very relevant in Joe. Turning from a 2-4-4-2 to a 2-5-5-2 is really nice.
Which is then why I also ended up putting in Scientific Theory, which I did get a ton of value out of.
Notably, both cards are from Edge of the Earth. So he Joe Diamond got a big boost. You actually don't know this. You probably don't know this, but ARKHAM recently announced, actually FFG recently announced that they are stopping printing on old sets as they continue to design new ones because they can't feasibly keep everything in stock.
That makes sense.
And keep making new content, right? So I'm curious to see how it's gonna go because there's a current, which is like the last 3 years, and like legacy, how that changes conversations and how even like you and I choose to do things, which is kind of fun because we have a choice. But it's like these kind of things where like Joe Diamond got such a big thing. If once these are out of current, Joe Diamond might also one day be out of current in terms of like that, and only in legacy. So I'm curious about that because it's like interesting for how these guys view their power level as their card pool changes.
I wonder too if that's going to change their design practice and how they're going to approach things.
I think so. So from what I hope is that they're willing to make card combos that are powerful in legacy, but less powerful in current. Without having to worry about, like, we can make a bomb-ass practice makes perfect skill without worrying about practice makes perfect because it doesn't exist. We can, like, la 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 la, you know, like that kind of thing.
Yes, and I love when formats do that personally.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
I know not everybody does, but I will also point this out as I sometimes am starting to notice in some of the spaces of ARKHAM. I'm not really a part of it yet, but I check it out. One thing I want to mention is you don't have to.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't have to play the super combo.
Yeah, you don't have to play the super combo, and you also don't have to not play the super combo. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
Right?
Just have fun however you're going to have fun.
Yeah.
So along with these fixings, I ended up putting in steady-handed, and it ended up doing a lot more for me than I expected. Yes. Even though I only had it, I think, for the last 2 or maybe 3 scenarios. Wow, is that a good card? You can treat that practically as Scientific Theory. I mean, it's only once every so often. Like, it has a limitation on it. But for the experience difference, like, this is not a bad card by any stretch of the imagination. And the fact that it can even do more at the 1 experience point is wild to me.
Yes, yeah.
This was actually me really discovering that Seekers are busted, and I hate them now. So, again, because I was flexing, but I was also flexing onto Violence, I took Vicious Blows. Just very good cards. They actually did a lot of work for me. The fact that you could...
And you upgraded them too eventually, right? Yeah,
I did.
Because the Practice Makes Perfect worked really well with them in theory, but also just like the extra damage. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually really struggled to hit them once I upgraded them. Practice Makes Perfect, like, never...
Yeah, it never really triggered on them. No.
Practice Makes Perfect was a great card in the early game, and then when it fell off, I was like, this is still a card.
I mean, it kind of makes sense because we got a lot of story assets in our deck and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I also then chose, because I was flexing, I made a very interesting choice, which is that I put in 2 Prepare for the Worsts.
Yeah.
And the only 3 weapons I was running. You cannot see that.
It is crazy how you did eventually go down to only 3 weapons.
By the end of the campaign, I only had 3 weapons.
Why don't you grab the upgrade card too so people can see your upgrade for
yes.
the Shotcaster. So it was like 2 for Rail Shooter, Telescanner, which makes sense, fighting and investigating. You had the Evade one too on Translocate, and then looks like you also got the Empowered to get +2.
Yeah.
So like it was like one of those things where it was less about using like the perfect stat, but more just like making your investigating and damage dealing more flexible.
100%. The whole focus for me on this build was just, okay, those are my 2 good stats. I'm going to flex into the 2 of them. I can see why people would often take the Etheric Lake for 2 additional Aether. I totally see it.
Yeah, I think it's more relevant when you're like building around a super stat as opposed to just, once again, yours is just for consistency.
Yeah, whereas mine's for flexing. And then, yeah, just 1 machete, and I think I played it once the entire campaign, and it was in the end.
No, you played it in all of them. You used it quite a bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sick. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, because it was your standard weapon. So you had 3 weapons, and it prepared for the worst. But luckily, never punished.
Never punished.
Never punished for that. I mean, you also had your signatures, but I don't remember you ever playing that.
No.
You might have played it like once.
I think I played it once.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went very low on weapons for a flex, and somehow the combination of the way that Joe Diamond deck builds and the way that this was all structured really worked for me. I think in some ways having extra card draw hidden in the Insight deck was a big part of helping me for that.
Yeah.
So like I was able to fetch what I needed.
And it did also help again that I was Bob and I was there to cover enemies if you needed as well.
100%.
Yeah.
So then I took deductions.
It's off camera now.
Oh, yeah. I took deductions. They're really... Oh, and for everyone who says the Hyperphysical Shotcaster is terrible, sure, but it was fun. I had a lot of fun with it. It was a great gun. I'm really glad I ran it. I'm now over the Hyperphysical Shotcaster.
Yeah, you've done it. You've done it.
I can hyperfixate on another bad card.
My issue with the Hyperphysical Shitcaster, as we lovingly call it, is I just think it's like an over-designed neutral card. Because I think the card is actually... I don't think it's bad. I think it's perfectly functional and it serves its purpose, especially in like solo play. I just don't like the design of it. It's like a little bit over-designed for me. Like I'm not even actually as big into like the whole it doesn't fit in the flavor because Arkham horror isn't really the same as Cthulhu mythos anymore. It's a lot different now. So like I can get past that. It's just there's too much text on it for me.
Yeah, so deduction was just good.
Yep, because you're flexing. Yeah, you have a practice makes perfect. You want to hit it. Yeah.
Exactly. But at the same time, I will also say for deduction, when it didn't hit it off practice makes perfect, I would often draw it in my hand and just be like, there's no good time to play this.
And again, I think as a big reason is because you leaned more to fighting, I leaned more to clooving, and my clooving when it was set up was very good.
Your cleaving was so strong.
Yeah.
I had to take the initiatives. I don't like that card. I only realized it in the final scenario. When you get to play it and it's perfect and the timing is exactly right, or you get it off of a practice makes perfect right off the bat, it feels really good. For me, it is a trap card. I can't say it's the same for everybody, but for me it is a trap card because once I start getting to my second action or my third action, or you've taken your turn first, I will not play this card, even when it's only 2 wilds, which is very, very bad idea. Play this when it's at 2. But I found it very hard to play this card, and often it was fodder in my hand for when the thing tried to get me to discard cards.
Can I offer you an alternative look at the card to maybe try it again in the future?
Yeah.
You know Promise of Power? You like that card, 4 wilds, you had a curse token in?
Yeah.
Use this for Mythos phase, because no one's has taken an action in the Mythos phase.
Oh, that's right. That
This campaign
sense.
doesn't actually have too much to test you on that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that while in Dark Matter it felt a little bit more dead. But like the idea is that if you use this card just for like 3 icons in the Mythos phase, it's practically like stopping a Mythos card.
And it's practically a Promise of Power. That actually makes sense, especially with the balance I've seen, which is a lot of tests are 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can totally see that. That's very funny. It's very funny that I never really clued into that.
Well, I think it's because Dark Matter doesn't test you as much that way.
But it is funny because that is a free version of the one I did pay 2 experience for that exact reason.
Yes.
I bought Survey the Area specifically to be a tech
Yeah.
for foot.
Yes.
So it's very funny to hear you bring this up because, yeah.
Well, I mean, I do think Survey the Area is a good card for Joe Diamond. If he had a version, I mean, actually he does, no, he doesn't have a version because the other one's the fist and foot. But if he had one for his brain, I think he'd also play that quite a bit too.
Yeah,
I think they're nice
100%.
cards for Joe.
Yeah, and it was great. But yeah, it's very funny to realize that Take the Initiative is a Survey the Area, but better.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very funny. I put in Practice Makes Perfect. I really liked it. It didn't always trigger. I was very confused as to how it worked at times because I tried to survey the area.
Yeah.
But
It's a strange interaction.
it was good. I liked it. I have my 3 unlock cards that I love so much. I eventually ended up taking the Strange Solution and taking the upgrade that was the Fight. Mostly so I could throw it at you, so that you could use it.
Yeah, I actually don't think you. I can't. Maybe you've played it once for yourself, but every other time I've just played it.
Yeah, and I loved it every
Yeah.
time. And occasionally I'd throw it as a 2-fist.
Yeah, you did once on a test for me. I remember that happening. Yeah.
And I was very okay with that.
Yeah.
I had the really awful Ravenous Myconid.
The health one. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you never actually you played like once.
Played it once.
Yeah, I mean, I think because your deck didn't really build around it again, so no.
I wanted it because it was cute, and the only reason I want to play Seeker is for the cute alien
Yeah.
that I can buy
Yeah.
and upgrade and raises my child. But there was no point where Ravenous Myconid wasn't going to get thrown. There was no point where the baby wasn't going to get thrown out with the bathwater if Michael showed up.
Yeah.
So I just didn't.
Well, this guy's normally on an ally slot.
Oh, right.
I
I was holding him my whole...
Oh, that's so
in
funny.
the final scenario. I
Yeah,
was like,
because
"This is
you're
an
like
ally."
it has a face. That's
Yeah,
an ally.
that's an
If
ally.
it has a face, that's an ally. I
I
get it.
100% was holding it the entire
That's funny.
finale. That's great. I should have had it out there. I would have had such a great time. Ace of Swords. I put it at the very end and then immediately drew it in my opening
feels
hand.
nice. Feels nice.
So that was good. And then I had 2 Perceptions and 2 Overpowers because literally the theme of my deck was...
Flexing, and also both practiced as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it kind of has this weird thing where like Practice Makes Perfect is both really good in Joe Diamond and by extension Roland Banks because of their card pool, but sometimes you just hit the wrong half of it for it. I think you had a pretty good hit rate overall, all things considered, but I definitely could see the awkwardness in some of your Practice Makes Perfects.
And it saved me constantly. And I love that. I will also say that I felt really, really soft. Like I felt my experience with Joe Diamond was really, really soft. I had a bad combo of Unspeakable Oath and Unsolved Case. But we made so much XP
Yes.
that sometimes it was okay to just take the hits.
Yep.
And I feel like in a harder campaign, I would not have been willing to do that. This would have been a really painful combo.
Yes, Dark Matter is notorious for its high XP counts.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm there being a bad influence telling you to take trauma so we can like get more experience.
Yes.
My Bob deck started as an Underworld support flex deck. I like rogues. I like the big rogue payoff cards, and I like Underworld support in rogues. This was maybe my first time doing it in Bob, with like a full like 30 card deck for Bob and down to 25 with this. But it meant that I could only run one-ofs, which made my deck a little bit more like hodgepodge of things. But 2 also allowed for me to experiment with some redundancy and effects that I've never really tried before, which was really cool. For permanents, I just had a Relic Hunter and Another Day, Another Dollar. These are just like easy cards to include, so I don't really want to talk about them. My big focus on my deck was big money, with obviously well-connected 3 as the payoff, because for every 4 resources you have, you get +1 skill value, and you can spend 2 to ready it. Basically, I get like 1 test a turn, 2 if I want to spend at a very high value. And, as the campaign went, I had a lot of ways to make money. I had a Faustian bargain and an emergency cash to start. I put in, these are good cards for making money. But then I put an Unscrupulous Loan, which is an insane card for making money. It's just 0 cost, gain 10, and when you're a big money deck, you're not going to get rid of that. You're going to have that the whole time. And when you're Bob with your Greed signature weakness, it basically just says you're going to take less horror as the game goes. I then put in a Payday, because my thought process was, we're going to get to it, but I have the red clock, so if I take a bunch of actions, I can use the Payday to get some extra money out of it. I also put in a hot streak as it went, because this is kind of like, again, I can't run 2 of Faustians, so why don't we put in a hot streak to get some more money. But I also put in this Cheat the System, which is my first time, well, not my first time, I've played every card in ARKHAM a few years ago. But this one, it was my first time trying it in a campaign-focused deck, where the idea was I only wanted it for just a fast 2 resources. And then as it turned out, I once triggered it for 4, because you gave me a Seeker card, and I think I had a Guardian? No, I had a, no, I think I might have gained too much money.
No, you had something out.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I think I did. I counted the Survivor twice. But that's okay. The 1 resource didn't matter because I had like 34. But it actually was kind of fun. But it was all held up on the back of Stylish Code. Hey, Russ, did you break in? Because Julie went upstairs? So with Stylish Code for the longest time, I've been putting it in my big money decks. And then I was just like, is this actually good enough? Like, is this actually worth the slot in my deck? And when you were able to, once I realized there's a signature asset in Dark Matter that gives you a resource whenever you activate it once per turn, turning that into 2 resources was really good. So I think that it's kind of just like campaign and deck dependent. But I think overall, when all was said and done, I got more value out of Stylish Coat than I had to put into it. So I still think the answer is the card's not necessary or great. But if you're playing Underworld support and you have to go to one-ofs, it's probably worth it to just make your economy better, because redundancy is key to winning when you have a one-ofs in your deck. It's funny, I play 2 big money decks with you now.
Yeah. I actually believe that it's the thing you play the most.
It's not. It's Silas Marsh specifically. Which also, yeah, it's also a red clock here. Really good for big money because of the payoffs for it. So I tried something different with this one, where I usually end up with red clock just getting like +4 over and over and over again, because the drip money is really good. But with this one, I was like, I'm going to just let this ride each time, because Dark Matter, again, is easy. I can just try some things out. And it worked out. Obviously, Red Clock 5 is a good card. You don't need me to say that to you, so it was very good here. My clue side of my flex deck focused on a few rogue staples that I always play. Lockpicks and Lola Santiago. They go together like peanut butter and more peanut butter. And then also big money, of course, works with Lola. Especially like when you get a payout from Red Clock and Stylish Coat. If I get 4 resources, I can just buy a clue, and it's like, don't even need to blink or think about it.
Yeah.
And then Matchbox, which is an item. I could play it for free if I had my Shrewd Dealings in play, my signature. But more importantly, it was just an easy item for me to put in play, but also discard if a card effect wanted me to discard. My fight side of things had a Switchblade. Mainly because I didn't want to have to think about ammo, right? I could just hold it in my hand and just like stab. With well connected, I could reasonably put out 3 to 4 damage a turn, right? And I thought that was going to be pretty fine for our flex environment. And it turned out to be. I also had an improvised weapon, which I don't think I actually played.
I think you played it once.
Yeah. I think my problem was I actually kept forgetting about it. It was in my discard. Because I'm not like a deck trying to take advantage of it. It was just there. And then every time I would draw it after reshuffle, I'd be like, oh yeah, I had that improvised weapon in my discard pile.
Was it that or a lantern that you threw at somebody?
Oh, my lantern, yeah.
Ah, there
Because
we
that was
go.
taken out. That was taken out, but that was
Yes.
part of my level 0 deck. But yeah, I love killing people with lanterns. I actually have like a very high kill rate against bosses with lanterns. I think I've killed like 4 of them with it. And then I also had long shot, which was really nice because I was also doing a lot of evading. As you were saying, I think you were saying this while we were eating dinner, seeing like evade in action, and like long shot's really nice because of that. I then have what I would like to call, I know my economy was literally on my big money decks, but because that's a combo deck, it's not really economy. It's like a combo. But I did have a lot of card draw or card selection. Notable ones, Lucky Cigarette Case 3, which I let Eric experience in the final scenario, which was really cool. All In, which was also really cool. I wish this didn't remove itself from the game, because I think it's a very fun card, and I feel like rogues should be allowed to do some broken-ass things at high experience levels, but it was still nice to draw 4 or 5 cards while taking a test. And then Black Market, because again, there's just some more card selection. I had some Perception and Manual dexes, because those were the things that I was doing most often. That was very rude, Russ. Knocked Eric's glasses off the table. But this also just because, again, they replace themselves, so that's very easy. I had my Protection, because even though once I get to Well Connected is high, I can survive most things, but you still need to get there. I also had 3 Mental Trauma, so I had to be aware of that. So I had the Liquid Courage and the Savant to help me. Liquid Courage, of course, is very good with Bob because it's an item and it's only costing 1. And then last but not least, I had my other cards are here too. Fox Mask to help buy my book and my foot. Schaffners to pay for items. And Pickpocketing to just, once again, if I'm evading, get more value out of it. But yeah, very straightforward deck, and also, I think a very successful deck. I knew if we got through the first scenario, I was a little bit worried about my deck in the first scenario, but I knew if we got through it, we would be looking at a very comfortable like finale, and I think that ultimately did end up happening.
You, I think, ended with, what, more than 30 resources?
Yeah, I think I had like almost 40, yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But yeah, so now, Eric, you get to decide. This is what I was telling Eric, we're not going to go in order. I know people were thinking we're probably going to be doing Innsmouth next, and we might, but I'm actually going to give Eric choice of the next campaign we're going to play. And you have 4 options, the 4 remaining campaigns in your blind play until Drowned City comes out, and then you'll have another one on the list. But Innsmouth, the Innsmouth Conspiracy. The investigators travel to Innsmouth and have to try to remember the strange things that happen to them as they try to escape the fishy deep ones. There is Edge of the Earth, where you go on an expedition in Antarctica to follow up on, well, it's a research team going to Antarctica and like based on the William Dyer, like the Mountains of Madness kind of thing. There is Scarlet Keys, the globetrotting adventure with the Red Glove Man. And then the Feast of Hemlock Vale, you join a survey team to a small island off the coast to get where they are getting ready for a feast. You're going there to examine some strange happenings with the flora and the fauna, and you stay on the island over 3 days as the preparation for the feast begins.
Oh, it's got to be Innsmouth or Hemlock Vale, and I think I have to go Hemlock Vale.
All right.
I really wanted to do Innsmouth because the idea, I wanted to see how they did memories, especially after playing.
Oh, this one, yeah. To see like
I wanted to
see
do
that,
a compare and contrast, but Hemlock Vale sounds so weird.
Yeah.
And the moment you're like, it's flowers, I'm like, it is Earthborn Rangers.
It is, yeah, just more Earthborn Rangers. All right, so our next one is going to be the Feast of Hemlock Vale. It's probably not going to start for a while on the channel because I think this video comes out in March, but it's not going to be out until May for the next one. So it's going to be a while till you see Eric in gameplay again, but rest assured there will be more. There's also going to be more talkie videos too, but that's going to be the next one, Feast of Hemlock Vale, so stay tuned for our deck building videos for that coming out in the near future. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Have a good one. Russ, say bye to everybody. Good boy. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, GG's.